I didn't believe it at first. When my friend sent me the link, I actually laughed. One of those short, nervous laughs that come when your brain hasn't caught up to reality yet. It was a wedding announcement. My ex-husband and my former divorce lawyer. Her smile was the same. Polished, professional, that quiet confidence that made me trust her from the start. He stood beside her, his hand on her waist, looking smug in a way only he could pull off. The headline was simple, almost clinical. Local attorney to wed business executive. No mention of me, of course. No footnote that I had once been the bridge between them, the unwitting introduction that made this whole thing possible. I stared at the screen, reading their names over and over, my coffee going cold in my hands. It felt like the air had thickened, like I'd stepped into a room I didn't remember walking into. And then, slowly, the laughter faded, the sting crept in. I wasn't sure yet if it was anger, humiliation, or something worse, but I could feel it blooming under my ribs, tightening. Have you ever been blindsided so badly that for a moment you thought it had to be a joke? I'm Claire, and this is the story of how the person I paid to protect me might have been planning my downfall from the very start. It's strange looking back now to remember how much I trusted her. When I first met Emily, that's her name, she had this way of making you feel like you were already halfway to safety. Her office smelled faintly of vanilla and paper, and her walls were lined with framed degrees and tasteful art that looked expensive but not pretentious. I was nervous walking in that day, hands sweating against the leather strap of my handbag, my heart running in short sprints. She listened. Really listened as I spilled months of frustration, arguments, and late nights alone into that quiet room. I told her about how Mark, my husband at the time, had become distant, how we barely spoke at home unless it was about bills or groceries, how I felt like I was slowly disappearing in my own marriage. Emily nodded in all the right places. She asked sharp questions, but never in a way that felt aggressive. It was comforting. Like maybe she saw something in me that I couldn't see anymore, someone worth fighting for. And then she started to plant the seeds. She didn't say, "You need to leave him," not right away. No, she was smarter than that. She framed it as options, as protecting myself, as knowing my rights. She made divorce sound less like an end and more like an escape hatch, a necessary step for my own happiness. I remember one line so clearly it still echoes. "You've been putting him first for years. Maybe it's time you put yourself first for once." At the time, I clung to that sentence. It felt empowering, like permission I hadn't realized I was waiting for. And when I hesitated, when I confessed that part of me still loved him, that maybe we could fix things, Emily tilted her head, her lips pressing into a small sympathetic smile. "If he wanted to fix it," she said softly, "he would have by now." It's embarrassing, in hindsight, how much weight I gave her words. She wasn't just my lawyer. She became my confidant, my late-night email responder, the person I cried to when Mark and I had one of our final blowout fights. Looking back now, I can see how well she positioned herself, how carefully she built that bridge between me and my decision, how she never once outright suggested counseling or taking time apart, just quiet nudges towards the inevitable. At the time, though, I thought she was saving me. Mark didn't fight much during the process. That should have been my first clue. He came to the meetings, signed what needed signing, barely raised his voice. It was as if the man who once argued with me about which way the dishwasher should face had suddenly decided I was right about everything. Emily called that a blessing. She told me how rare it was for divorces to move this smoothly. She said it was because I was handling things with grace. And I believed her. The day it was finalized, Emily hugged me, actually hugged me right there in her office, and said, "You're free now. Go live your life." It's almost laughable now, that phrase. Because I didn't know then, my so-called freedom was just the space they needed. In the weeks after the divorce, I tried to focus on building a new routine. New coffee shop instead of the one Mark and I used to go to, new grocery store farther away so I didn't have to risk bumping into him in the produce aisle. I thought I was healing. But little things kept coming back to me, moments from before the papers were signed, and they didn't sit quite right anymore. Like that one afternoon in Emily's office when Mark arrived a few minutes early, I was already there, sitting in the corner chair, thumbing through some forms. Emily had been typing something at her desk, but when he walked in, she lit up. Not just polite client-to-client lighting up, something else, something warmer. I caught it for maybe 2 seconds, her smile slipping into something softer, more personal, before she straightened and went back to her professional tone. At the time, I told myself I was imagining it. Or the way Mark had suddenly started wearing cologne again during the divorce process. Not the one I'd bought him years ago, but something sharper, more expensive. I remember teasing him, well, half teasing, half digging, about who he was trying to impress. He just smirked and said, "You never know." I assumed he meant other women in general. I didn't think he meant her. There was also that meeting where Emily insisted we all sit together to clarify final details. Mark sat closer to her than he needed to. Their chairs were almost touching. And when she passed him a document, their fingers brushed, too long for just a pass. I noticed, but my brain filed it away as nothing, because what else could it be? I told myself I was paranoid, that I was sensitive because of everything we were going through. Emily had been so careful to seem like she was on my side. She gave me the language to explain my frustrations, the courage to push through the guilt. Now, with hindsight, I wonder how much of that courage was just manipulation. Because here's the thing. Once I saw the wedding announcement, my mind started stringing these little beads together into a necklace I couldn't ignore. The sudden calmness Mark had during the divorce, Emily's quiet avoidance of any reconciliation talk, the way she would sometimes end our meetings with, "I'll take care of everything, you just rest." Rest? Or just stay out of the way? It's unsettling when your memories start to feel like they've been edited. You look back and realize that maybe the real story was playing out right in front of you, and you were just reading the wrong script. Still, I didn't have proof. All I had were moments, glances, odd silences, until I decided to look. And that's when the threads really began to unravel. The wedding announcement wasn't flashy, just a neat little post buried on Emily's law firm's Facebook page, shared by a handful of mutual acquaintances. Congratulations to Emily Parker and Mark Reynolds on their upcoming nuptials. My breath caught when I saw it. I read it once, twice, 3 times. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe there was another Mark Reynolds. But the photo told me otherwise. It was him, standing beside her in a sunlit park, his hand on the small of his back like it had once been on mine. She wore a pale blue dress. He wore the navy suit I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary. I don't know how long I stared before I realized my coffee had gone cold in my hands. At first, I just sat there, stunned. And then the questions started. When did this happen? Was it after the divorce or before? How long had they been whatever they were? I tried to dismiss it, tell myself they'd found each other after we'd split, that it was just one of those bizarre coincidences life throws at you. But the longer I sat with it, the less I believed that. So I did something I'm not proud of. I started digging. I went back through old emails, not just between me and Emily, but between her and Mark. There weren't many, at least not in my folders, but the tone was odd, warm, sometimes almost playful. In one, she signed off with, "See you Thursday." Thursday? We didn't have a Thursday meeting scheduled. Then I checked social media. Her firm's photos, tagged pictures from networking events, charity galas, and there they were, side by side more often than I'd realized. Sometimes at the same table, sometimes across the room, but caught in the same candid frame. One image in particular made my stomach flip. It was from a fundraising dinner last year, months before the divorce. Emily was laughing at something, her head tilted back slightly. Mark was looking at her in that way I used to know so well. The way you look at someone you can't stop thinking about. It hit me like a punch. They hadn't found each other after the divorce. They'd been there all along. Suddenly, so many little details from that time started making sense.
The way Emily had brushed off counseling when I'd suggested it, the way Mark had stopped arguing as if the end was already written, the strangely quick turnaround on the settlement agreement. They'd been building their bridge while I was burning mine. I sat there in my kitchen, my phone screen glowing, feeling like the last year of my life had been a carefully staged play, and I'd been the only one who didn't know the ending. Part of me wanted to call her, or him, or both, to demand answers, to scream, "Why didn't you just tell me?" But I didn't. Because the deeper truth is, they didn't have to tell me. They'd gotten exactly what they wanted, and I'd handed it to them tied in a ribbon because I trusted her to protect me. And maybe that's the part that hurt the most. Not losing him, not even losing the marriage, but realizing that the person I chose to guide me through the wreckage had been secretly steering me toward the cliff from the very start.
It's been 3 weeks since I found out. 3 weeks since the photo of them together in that perfect sunlit park burned itself into my mind. I haven't confronted either of them. Not because I'm scared, though maybe I am a little, but because I don't see the point. What would they say? It just happened. We didn't mean for you to get hurt. We waited until after. All the usual lies people tell to make their own actions sound gentler than they were. The truth is, I already know what happened. I can feel it in the gaps between my memories. I can see it in the way Emily always kept her office door open when we met, except when Mark arrived early. I can hear it in the strange confidence he had while we were separating, as though he wasn't losing anything at all. I think back to those moments now and feel this strange detachment, like I'm watching a movie I've already seen, one where I know the villain's face from the first frame, but the characters on screen still haven't figured it out. The irony. Emily was the one who told me to be brave, to stop letting my marriage define my worth. She pushed for the divorce faster than I was ready for. She framed it as a fresh start for me, but maybe it was really a fresh start for them. And Mark? He was all too willing to follow her lead. I can't even picture them falling in love in some romantic way. I picture strategy, whispered conversations when I wasn't there, lingering looks they didn't bother to hide once I stopped paying attention. People tell me I should be angry, I should rage, I should burn something down, metaphorically, of course, but I'm not there. Not yet. Instead, I'm sitting in this odd, quiet space. I make my coffee in the mornings, I water my plants, I go to work, I pass by the park where that engagement photo was taken, and I keep walking. The anger will come, maybe, or maybe it won't. What's here now is something colder. Not forgiveness, never that, but a kind of resignation. And knowing that some people will look you in the eye, hold your hand, and still plan your undoing in the same breath. I know their wedding date now. It's in 2 months. I won't be there, obviously. I won't even be in town. But I have this quiet, almost shameful curiosity about how they'll look at each other that day. Will it be relief? Triumph? Or will there be that tiny flicker, the one that says they both know they didn't get there honestly? Either way, it's not my story anymore. I've been written out of their script. But here's what they don't know. I see them for who they really are. And sometimes knowing the truth, even if it changes nothing, is its own kind of power. For now, I'll keep living my life. Let them have each other. They've been rehearsing for this role long enough.